All right, here we go. Legal podcast, Battleborn, Injury Lawyers, Legal podcast. We'll get a name eventually. Justin Watkins is here. Ryan McKinnell is also in, as Ryan has some really pressing legal questions to get to. We're going to get to the UFC fighter Mike Perry, street fighting, knocking out an old man. Ryan apparently has been threatened with legal action, or maybe loosely threatened with legal action. So that's all coming up. But let's get to the news of the day. And I hadn't even thought of this, and this is why we have to turn to Justin many times. But Adam Hill and I on Cofield and Company were ranting and raving about the college football season changing drastically as the Big Ten, probably to be followed by the ACC and Pac-12, aren't going to play a non-conference slate. Those are contracted games, right, Justin? And in the case of many of the Group of Five and then FCS programs, hey, game with Michigan, like Arkansas State's supposed to head up to Michigan. I think it's might be Ball State was supposed to head up to Michigan as well. Those are money games. There's money being taken out of those athletic programs and those schools' pockets. Don't they have contracts on these games?
Yeah, and so as we often talk about on here, the contract terms are going to rule. So whether there's an out clause in there for, we can have a debate of whether or not this is an act of God. A couple of weeks ago, I told you, it was man-made, but I guess the consensus scientific opinion is that it is in fact not man-made, the virus. And so I think would have a strong argument for this is an act of God that makes the contract impractical or impossible to perform. And there's going to be all major contracts are going to have that kind of clause that says this is not a defaulting event if an act of God prevents either of the parties from being able to perform their duties. But so what do we got here? There's a cancellation fee.
Yeah, this is Purdue, Memphis, and I know a Memphis radio host was asking for legal experts. You actually are on Twitter. There's plenty of fake legal experts on Twitter, but asking legal experts to look at this and see if Memphis is going to get some sort of payout.
This isn't the pertinent clause, right? So a cancellation fee, you would argue, is if I'm the canceling party, I would say this cancellation fee provision is not what applies because I'm not doing this by my own volition. It's not that I wish to cancel. It's that I'm being forced to cancel by act of God. So there is, in a contract like this, there will be a whole set of provisions that talk about the default. And my guess is this section B of the cancellation fee is going to be part of a default. And a default is, by its very nature, in the description, going to be something that is your fault. You didn't do something you were supposed to do. You are in default of the contract, and here are the ramifications for that. Cancellation fee, liquidated damages, those kinds of things will all come into play. But there also are going to be a ton of descriptions of types of things that are not default that allow the parties out of the contract or to not perform. And so, like I said, this is where you're often going to see an act of God. I mean, for instance, let's say there was a hurricane that came through wherever a football game was supposed to be played, and due to weather and safety concerns, they cannot have the game. They can't hold the game. Then that would not be seen as a cancellation. And I think that they would have a pretty strong argument that they couldn't. I mean, what's the reality of this, right? They're not going to put this in front of a judge to interpret the terms of the contract, right? These are ongoing relationships that they need to keep in good favor both ways. So I don't expect you're going to see any litigation over this. I think what you'll see is rescheduling in a future date. Maybe to entice it, they reschedule and give them a couple dates with that opponent. Maybe the next time the payment is a little bit more, but this isn't going to be litigated in court.
Justin, it is on topic, but as we talk about liability and responsibility, I think the act of God stuff's really interesting. Could you envision a scenario where our country continues down this path, right, and numbers rise, and COVID continues to be this story? Let's say this is the first domino to fall with the NCAA. Games don't get played. Could you see universities or other entities? I mean, I really don't know. I'm kind of just formulating this, but could you see them going after leadership legally? Like, federal leadership, state leadership. When we're talking about billions of dollars at stake, some of this feels like negligence, especially when you look at what's happening in our country into our sports and what's happening, across the globe.
No, because in almost every state and certainly at the federal government, there is sovereign immunity, and there are immunity. So sovereign immunity you can't sue the government unless the government gives you permission to do so. And so they do give you permission under certain circumstances that you in fact can sue the federal government or the state government. For instance, if a post office worker gets into a car accident, you in fact can sue the federal government for that, and there's no limitation on damages. If a Clark County firefighter, so now we're in the state of Nevada, they get into a car accident, you can in fact sue the state of Nevada and the subdivision of Clark County, but the cap on damages is $100,000. So they do give you permission to sue, but they limit your damages. I stand corrected as I'm saying that. I think we just raised that to $250 this last legislative session, and that was in response to a huge fire that occurred in and around the Washoe and Carson Valleys, and it destroyed a lot of homes, and $100,000 wasn't sufficient to compensate the victims for the damages. But when somebody's performing a part of their public service duties and they do so negligently, they're doing some sort of discretion that is given to them in public service, and they do so negligently or they make the wrong decision, 99% of the time, that is going to be pure immunity. You cannot sue for a discretionary decision. Now, if there was some kind of paper trail that there was an elected official who had it out for one particular business, and they wrote a emergency order that in essence targeted only that business and exempted every other business and industry, then maybe you get somewhere because there's intent. But it's not just negligence. The fact of the matter is, to answer your question shortly, you cannot sue your elected leaders for negligence or the people that work for them.
Okay. Well, let's move on to another elected leader issue. And this is really more of an opinion. You were a public servant. Did you see the story today about the list of sports figures, other companies who got to dip into the PPP pot? And that includes Tom Brady's company getting somewhere between $350,000 and $1 million. I saw Scott Boras was involved on that. We know the Lakers about a month ago were like, oops, we got caught, gave back $4.6 million. What's your general opinion of what's happened with the PPP, the lack of oversight? I guess this is oversight. The lack of oversight, and how is that related to, say, like Ryan McKinnell not getting money from unemployment? JVT's wife hasn't got a dime from unemployment. What's going on?
Okay, so I'm going to be careful here and start with the disclosure that our firm did receive a PPP loan. And so with that caveat, let's say this. I think that the policy behind the PPP program was misplaced, because the idea was that if we provide this carrot, you will keep people employed, which is the stipulation of receiving the PPP, right? So on one side of it, everybody's looking at Tom Brady or the Lakers or whoever it is and says, hey, you are a billionaire, or you're a 100 millionaire, or you're a tens of millionaire. Why do you get a PPP loan? And the answer would be, because I was going to downsize in response to what's going on, and now I won't. So the PPP program is intended to not compensate businesses directly, but to actually use them as a funnel to keep people employed. Because the PPP loan gives you 2.5 times your payroll, but you must keep your monthly payroll, but you must keep all those people employed for 10 weeks. So what does that tell you? The money goes straight through, right? Now, if you were never going to terminate somebody, nobody was ever going to lose their job, and you got a PPP loan, right? Did you come out ahead? Yeah, you did. Are there a ton of people, are there a ton of companies that did that because it's free money? It's interest free. You don't have to pay it back. The principal's forgiven. Yes, I think that it's a fantasy to assume that every one of the businesses that applied and received a PPP loan would have downsized but for that money. So I think that from a policy perspective, while the idea was right, we want to keep people employed, and that worked. I think that there should have been, it isn't lack of oversight, it's a lack of planning on the front end. They should have had some checks to determine whether or not people were going to be laid off, and how to verify that. How you do that in the short amount of time that this came out and to try to save the economy from completely tanking, I don't really know. I don't know that it really could have been, but I would venture to guess that if you grabbed any congressperson off the record, off to the side, and said, "Do you guys think you did this right?" they would probably say no, because there weren't enough strings attached to ensure that the purpose of the money was used correctly. I mean, we threw in $1 trillion into keeping people employed. What percentage of those people were going to stay employed? We'll probably never know the answer. How does that tie in to unemployment? Well, it ties in, I guess, in this way. All of this is part of the CARES Act, right? The PPP is a sub-program of the $1 trillion CARES Act. And part of that was to make sure that unemployment benefits were boosted by the $600 that the federal government threw in that you normally wouldn't get. So the $480-something unemployment payment that you would get in the state of Nevada, if my memory serves me right, and pulling off the top of my head, gets boosted up to $600 if it gets processed, and expanded to gig workers, independent contractors who may not normally be subject to unemployment or recipients of unemployment. And so here they're trying to do that in cash poor states like the state of Nevada. We don't have the infrastructure to actually process that amount of claims. That's my dog. And so again, on the front end, there was insufficient planning to dump this amount of money into our bureaucratic structure, especially for a state like Nevada. We don't have the ability to do it.
Justin, how concerned should we be? I mean, as we talk about unemployment and people waiting months, JVT's wife not getting through. I've certainly had my own issues. The line is, I mean, you've heard the horror stories. I talk to different people, you get different answers, right? I mean, you have, some experience, obviously, with this. You're obviously a lawyer, but just as a personal, as a Las Vegan, like as a member of this state, like, what's your concern level? How concerned should we be?
Very concerned, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even just that unemployment bucket of money is more secure than the rest of the budgetary buckets that we have out there, because there's the federal funding and there's a huge escrow that goes into unemployment. So I feel confident that those claims can and will be paid.
Okay.
When they will be paid, I don't know, but they're not going to be able to avoid just not paying it, even if somebody goes back to work. If there's an unemployment, they're going to have to pay it when they get processed. But here's the reality. We are having a special session in Carson City right now to talk about budget cuts to a state that already operates on the barest of budgets that can possibly be run on. And so the problem isn't going to get better. The problem's going to get worse, because as we speak, well, no, they adjourned for the day, but all day today, the topic of special session was, what are we cutting and from where? And the ask is $1.2 billion in cuts, okay, for this next year. Our annual budget is just over $4 billion. So we're talking 25 to 30% cuts if you did it across the board, but we know it's not going to happen that way. It's going to be deeper in some areas and shallower in others. So if this economy doesn't turn around, if we don't start getting gaming taxes up, if we don't start getting sales and live entertainment taxes How worried should we be? Very, very worried.
All right.
Nevada has a hard enough time providing the basic services that a government should provide from a taxpayer's standpoint.
Yeah.
And when you take 40% of that out, it's very, very difficult.
Well, and I believe I saw a number 250 million from healthcare.
Doesn't surprise me. Right?
Yeah, something like that. And all I could think about was, I've been out here 13 years, so obviously it's not as long as most people probably listening and watching on this stream, but, the care hasn't been that wonderful. You know what I mean? And right. I came from a state, Indiana, that when I was leaving was just about to have an HIV/AIDS outbreak. But I mean, that care comparatively to what I got here, it's just, Justin, and I appreciate the honesty, because I'd rather have the honesty in your opinion and what to look ahead to, because, I mean, my gut is, right, I should be a little concerned and I should be planning for the future, because this all seems very, very serious.
Yeah, no, it is. And so, the basic functions, there's sort of a trifecta of what you look for at the state level, and that's healthcare, education, and public safety. Right. And that has some tie-in with healthcare, but for, we're talking about police force, we're talking about fire, we're talking about cops, we're talking about highway patrol. And I would argue that we don't properly fund any three of those when times are good and times are about to get bad.
Yeah. Back to the PPP loans, not really loans, but, is that too strong? Basically, companies are stealing dollars. There was no oversight put in place, and could there be oversight put in place where you have to show that you kept the majority of your employees if you got the money?
Oh, you have to show you kept the employees. No, you have to give them the payroll and ask for forgiveness of the principal. If not, then you have to pay back the principal plus what I believe is 1 or 2%, depending on your payback period. So if you take the money and then fire people, you're going to have to pay it back for sure. So right. You have to prove over the 10-week period that you kept everybody on staff, and you didn't cut anybody.
But it's only 10 weeks.
What's that?
It's only 10 weeks.
And that's all the money they were given, though, right? They were given 2.5 times monthly payroll. So it pencils out exactly. That's why I say the businesses were just a conduit of payroll to employees. Now, where it gets tricky is, say you're a business that most of the employees are owners of the business anyway, and it's just passing through to you. So, like, not to get too deep in legalities of things, like, I am not technically an employee of my law firm, right? My business, I have a separate entity that owns my portion of the law firm. So when my law firm applied for the PPP loan, my salary did not come into the equation. But there are tons of businesses out there in which the owner's salary will come into the equation. Does that mean they're stealing it? Maybe not. I mean, maybe they would go under if that didn't happen. Each situation is different, but they do have to prove it. There is a box that you have to check that confirms that you were affected by the pandemic, but who wasn't, right? Like, who wasn't? You know, we did the extra steps in our firm to show the intakes, right? We were here and now we're here, right? We made sure that we were in a position that we can prove exactly how it affected us from, March 12th to March 16th when everything shut down. What kind of proof will they ask for when they do some random audits? I don't know. But everybody does have to reapply for the forgiveness. So nothing has been forgiven yet. They don't even have the application out yet. So nothing's been forgiven. People may have to pay this back. And then I guess the cynic in me would say, cool. So they got, even if they do have to pay it back, they got a 1% loan from the federal government.
This is interesting question here on what's happening with unemployment and people aren't getting their money. Lots haven't been paid from the very beginning. I don't even know how to answer this. Like, what if someone loses their home before they get paid?
Can't you lose your home right now?
Okay.
The laws don't allow it.
Explain further.
You're not allowed to be evicted, and you're not allowed to be foreclosed upon right now. It's in the emergency decree. You can currently now, as of July 1st, as a commercial tenant, be evicted for non-payment of rent, but as a residential, you cannot be evicted for non-payment of rent. And from the bank's perspective, for non-payment of mortgages, you cannot be defaulted and foreclosed upon. So they did think that far ahead.
Okay. Let's get to one of the big stories of the day. And Ryan, you want to explain this, and I'll punch up the video. Mike Perry, UFC fighter, at a bar in Lubbock, Texas, and things go sideways.
Yeah, so apparently we're still getting details about this. UFC fighter, as you said, Mike Perry, Lubbock, Texas. He's at an establishment. Apparently an argument ensued. They asked Perry to leave the establishment. He said he wasn't leaving until the cops showed up and dragged him out. Then, according to a couple different witnesses' reports, we're about to see the video, he does hit an older gentleman. But then it's also, according to reports, he also may have allegedly hit a woman and another person. And then, I mean, so you have the physical altercation, right? Make matters worse, he just starts screaming the N-word a bunch. So it's just, I mean, if you're an MMA fan or if you're a person who covers MMA, like myself or you, Steve, at different points, or Adam, it's kind of the stupid nonsense that we've been fighting against for 20 plus years. And I mean, we saw Conor McGregor, right? Whatever it was, a year ago, punch the old dude on the stool in Ireland. This is just another one of those videos. But again, this is the physical coupled with the audio of Mike Perry just dropping N-bombs. It's just UFC, baby.
Outside? I don't have to go anywhere.
Touch her again, motherfucker.
Tell them to bring the. Are you bringing the cops? Because if I leave, then did you touch me? Oh, you didn't touch me?
You were trying to calm him down, bro. You were hitting my
He touched me.
You were hitting my fucking phone.
So he touched me. He touched me. You can all lie to him if you want to.
You hit him. That's right. You hit him, bro. You hit him.
But y'all gonna tell the police that I fucking
You don't tell the police.
I'm not.
So right there, he says, because the guy starts mocking on the old guy, mocks on his pronunciation of the police. And Mike Perry says, I'll knock your old fat ass out. I think this is where the old guy's like, okay, try it. All right, and then it just gets wild, and he starts throwing N-bombs, which he's done, I think, hundreds of times in public now. So why he is fighting for the UFC is beyond me. Ryan will explain that in a couple of minutes. But in that fight, like, what are you seeing there from a legal standpoint, Justin? Mike Perry from the UFC just won a fight 2 weeks ago. He's about 6 feet tall. How old is he, Ryan? He's 30 years old, something like that, right?
Yeah, early 30s, yep.
Yeah. 6 feet, probably about 200 pounds, 195. Clearly he's got about 30 years on the guy he just punched to the ground.
So the backstory is important here. And whether or not that young lady who was telling him to leave is an employee or owner of the establishment is important, I think, from the analysis, because it sounds like he's being directed to leave. And his refusal to do so is now trespassing. Okay, so now he's in a place that he doesn't have a legal right to be. And you know where I'm about to go with this, because we've talked about these kinds of issues before. Your rights to self-defense are dependent upon you being in a place that you have a right to be, or defending your property or your person. So if we just take out for a moment that he's trespassing, and we just look at the altercation between the elderly man and, well, I don't even think he's elderly, just the older dude, and Perry, it's a tough call for me, man, who the aggressor is. Like, because I don't know. I just don't see a clear picture as to what that dude was doing with his hands when he sort of kind of came in there, and whether or not that young lady was kind of in between and he was trying to protect her from his contact, or he was trying to initiate contact with Perry. And so it's complicated, but I think the clear line that makes it easy is he's trespassing. He doesn't have a right to be there. And so then he doesn't have the right to object to the person coming at him. Now, I would agree with that comment that it appears like he started the.
Yeah, so so go ahead. You're saying he started the altercation. Again, what's the appropriate legal response? And on top of that, we've talked about this before. I need to be reminded, when you're a UFC fighter, when you're a boxer, is there the whole lethal weapon, lethal hands thing? You have a certain responsibility to not be punching people out when you're a professional.
So let's start with, we have a trespasser on our presence. And what do I have the legal right to do? I have the legal right to use physical force necessary to remove that person from the property if they're unwilling to leave. Okay? I mean, this is what you see at casinos here, right? The bouncers don't, if somebody's being unruly, they put hands on them and get them out, right? You have the right to do that if somebody's refusing to leave your property. So that's why I say it's important for me to know why that guy was initiating contact and what his role is in it. Because that young lady was in between them, and she seems to be the one who is in charge or is working for the establishment, and maybe he is too. And if he is too, then Perry's in a lot of trouble. Then he doesn't even have a self-defense argument, right? He's refusing to leave. I can physically remove you. You don't have a right to self-defense upon that physical removal, okay? Unless I just went exceeding with excessive force. If he was initiating contact for the purposes of defending her, he can be okay. I'm talking about the older guy. If he's defending her and using physical force in defense of her, that's okay. You can defend other people, and that there can be a transfer of your rights there. And so to be honest with you, to know the best answer, I need to know what those two, what their roles were with the establishment and what had been said before and what instructions had been given to him. I mean, clearly they were telling him to leave, but if that's just two other bar goers telling him to leave, well, then he's not trespassing, and changes the whole dynamic.
Ryan, you got some
follow-up? How much does him being a UFC? Yeah, well, I just wanted to know how much it changes things with him being a UFC fighter, because Justin, it's one of the things we talk about all the time, right? Deadly weapons, deadly weapons. I mean, I'm of the opinion Mike Perry, under any normal laws don't apply to him, right? Being what he is, a professional fighter, shouldn't he be expected to show more restraint than your average civilian? I don't know. I just, whenever you see something like this, it never sits well.
The short answer is no. He's not held to a different standard, but what the jury does is put themselves in his shoes to determine whether or not he is using reasonable force in self-defense. He may not even have a self-defense argument for all the reasons we stated before, but let's say he did, okay? Now, will it come out that he's a professional fighter? Yeah, because it pertains to what is reasonable force for him. He has more weapons at his disposal, but it looks like it was a single punch. And so taking all the other arguments aside, and whether or not, and let's just say that guy was unjustified in putting hands on him and he throws one punch, I don't think that's deadly force. No.
Brady was asking, what if they tell him to leave, but the cops are on the way? Is he required to wait for the cops?
So I think what he was trying to say here is that you're accusing me of having hit somebody else in there, and you've called the cops. And if I leave, like you're telling me to leave, then they're going to say I fled the scene. I think that's what he was trying to articulate as best as I can get. Because the young lady said, you were hitting my customers. That's what made me think she's part of the ownership or she works there. And that's why he's saying she touched, or he or she, they touched me. But that does not give him the right to stay on and trespass, right? You go out to the sidewalk and you wait. And this isn't this isn't a car accident. This isn't a hit and run situation. He can leave the scene and they can contact him, right? Or he can call the cops himself and say, here's what I'm going to do. You don't get to say, oh, you're calling the cops? Well, cool. That means I'm allowed to sit here and do whatever I want on your property. It does not give you that ability.
An update on the story from this afternoon, Lubbock Online, is David Clary sent this over. Let's see. According to the report, an argument started between Perry and another individual after the welterweight believed the other person to be saying something about his girlfriend. They began pushing each other's faces when the restaurant manager broke up the skirmish. At that point, Perry pushed the manager. In the video, other patrons are yelling at Perry as they exit the restaurant. The older male and Perry exchange words. The fighter struck the other man in the face. He fell to the ground. Bystanders heard his head hit the concrete and said he appeared to be unconscious. Man was taken to local medical center. Initially had little recollection of the incident. He then remembered telling Perry he saw him hit the table 82 manager and nothing thereafter. No charges have been filed and Perry was not arrested.
Well, we know what is put there is not exactly true, right? Because they say that the elder gentleman and Perry exchanged words and then skipped forward to Perry hitting him. But there was a physical altercation before it got to that level, and that's super important as to what that was and who initiated it. And the reality is, what really happens in these situations when there's bar fights, everybody's drunk. You know, the cops go there and they're like, anybody seriously hurt, right? Like, all right, we're all done here. Pack up. You go that way. You go that. We've all been at the bar. We've all seen this, how this actually plays out. And the reason is because they can't possibly get the full story from what, even with video, you know, even with that snippet, I don't know what happened before that led to that.
Someone was asking, with civil litigation, would a separate standard apply in terms of who Perry is and how dangerous he is?
No, and the standard for what is, you know, self-defense is going to be the same. Actually, it's going to be an analysis of whether or not that person was not the original aggressor and perceived themselves to be in imminent danger of bodily harm. Right, that's the standard for me to use physical force to defend myself. Would a jury know about Perry being a UFC fighter? Yes, from both sides of that equation. Number one, like, let's say it was the young lady who pushed him. Well, although she looked pretty fit. Let's just say it's a 5'2", 95-pound, you know, waitress or hostess who says you need to leave, and she places her hand on his chest, and he hits her and says, boom, you touched me, I'm allowed to defend myself. Would a jury believe that a UFC fighter was actually in fear of physical bodily harm? So that comes in on that part of the analysis. On the backside of the analysis, even if you have the right to defend yourself, you must do so with reasonable force. So the reasonableness of his force, the issue of what he's capable of, would come in as well.
Let me punch up what the UFC released today, because I thought this was interesting, and I'm guessing a lot of it's for legal reasons. I don't see why the guy is still around. I think he's an embarrassment to the promotion. I also think anytime he comes to town in the future with the promotion, I think there should be a warning sent out that this guy's a dangerous individual and there's a menace in our community. I'm not a fan of Mike Perry. He lacks self-discipline. He's a bore. He's a racist. And now we see that he's completely unhinged. So what the UFC and Perry apparently is building his defense around is that, well, he's got a drinking issue. He's going to now go into treatment, which I think this is really interesting as an offshoot. But it says here the UFC is aware and troubled by the video that was released last night concerning Mike Perry. He further acknowledged that he believes he has some issues related to alcohol abuse and is informed the UFC that he is committed to immediately seek professional treatment, including substance and behavioral counseling. He will not be offered a bout, and the parties will have to agree to evaluate the next steps for Perry. Freudian slip there, right? Perry, following the completion of this treatment program. So from a legal standpoint, is that part of the motivation behind what the UFC has released here? Or could the UFC just go, you know what? This guy's a lunatic. We don't need him. He's barely above 500. He's an embarrassment. And yes, if we bring him on the road, we feel like he's a danger to that community?
A couple different issues here. So there's the PR side of me that says what you just laid out is the right move, right? Yeah, we're embarrassed. We don't want these kinds of people fighting for our promotion. We're done. We sever ties. We hope that he goes and gets the treatment that he needs if that's what he needs. Would the UFC be responsible for anything that happened up until this point? No indication that his appearance at this bar had anything to do with the UFC. So that answer would be no, unless I stand corrected and it was some sort of promotion at a bar to promote his fight or to do some interviews or what have you. It was some sort of sanctioned event. That clearly doesn't seem to be the case. But now what's tricky is, now they say, we acknowledge that he believes he has issues related to alcohol abuse. So now if they continue having him on contract and send him out to the world, could they be exposing themselves to liability if something like this were to happen again? And I would argue the answer is yes, depending on what state you're in. Alcohol itself, alcohol abuse, being drunk is not a legal defense to crimes or in civil litigation to a civil wrong that you do to somebody. You can't say, I knocked you out, I'm sorry, I was drunk. You don't get off for that, right? But in most states, there is not what's known as dram shop liability, which means that nobody else is responsible for your actions as a drunk. The bar's not responsible because they gave you too much to drink. Your employer is not responsible because it was a work event and alcohol was present. But some states do allow it. Nevada is obviously, it's not a dram shop state. You're not getting any liability past the drunk person. But now we take this person, he's on your promotion, you know he's got a problem. And I just think the funniest thing about that statement is how, I don't know how to put this kindly, how ignorant it is to the fact of alcohol abuse, and basically says, he won't fight and we won't promote him until he's completed the program. And anybody would tell you anything about sort of alcohol abuse is there's no such completion, right? My statement would be, so long as he continues in the program, right? It doesn't end. You don't go for 28 days like the movie and then you're solved forever. You know, that's, some people that may happen. They may be, struck by the magic lightning. But the reality of alcohol abuse is it's an illness that's lifelong and it requires constant maintenance and treatment, and not treatment in, the traditional sense of like you're taking drugs or anything, but mental health treatment, 12-step programs, those kinds of things. You got to, if I'm a promotion and you did something like this, you've got to show me that this is an ongoing part of your life to make sure that you're better. Not just that you completed some outpatient program.
And to Steve's point about the UFC, going to cities and continuing and promoting Mike Perry in the future, Steve, very reminiscent of me to a guy that we know from the olden days, not quite NHB, but Jason Mayhem Miller. You know what I mean? Like where there was writing on the wall with Mayhem that he had substance abuse problems, that he wasn't all there in terms of mental capacity. And it was early on too, and no one seemed to help him, right? So to Justin's point about what they're setting up for the future, I mean, I'm genuinely concerned for Mike Perry going forward. I'm with Justin in terms of the kind of just callousness at way. You didn't use the word callousness when you talked about the statement, Justin, but just kind of the flippancy at which it was thrown out. It's like I guess what I'm getting at, guys, I'm still worried about the future of Mike Perry because I don't think the UFC is the place where you actually get help. And the dude needs help. And also, I said early 30s, Mike Perry's 28. I don't know if it's the face tats. That's a rough 38. And I know I'm not one to talk, but I'm just saying, rough 38. 28.
Do we know about morality clauses? Do we know about morality clauses in UFC?
I'm sure there is a morality clause, right? Because these are basically contracts of adhesion. They're take it or leave it contracts. So let's bring it back to the first topic we talked about. Anything that they can use to not perform the contract for any reason that they want without it being default, they're going to want in there. And a morality clause is simply an out. It says, we're not going to perform the contract because you're a dipshit. right? It's cool, right? They're going to write that in there. I mean, they're going to write in acts of God. They're going to write in the UFC. I bet in that contract has dozens of ways that they can get out of a contract, release a fighter without pay. And the contract probably has one or two clauses that allow the fighter to some sort of remedies for a UFC default.
Could they require a continued monitoring meeting, alcohol testing to continue fighting? Yeah.
Right. I mean, the courts do that, right? I mean, on DUIs, to the point I was making earlier, right? They require sign-in sheets, 12-step programs, right? They require you to go out to outpatient or inpatient treatment for 30 days, and then you have to go, X number of times. The state bar has times where they require people to sign-in sheets for alcohol or drug treatment programs for years, 5, 10 years. And that's what I think is appropriate in something like this. Not as soon as he completes the program, we're good. That I don't think that helps you.
I feel like it's more than they've done for other fighters like John Jones and Conor McGregor. You didn't see this edict getting passed down to Conor McGregor.
Nope, you're right about that.
I don't mean to laugh, but come on.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's a joke, and it's been consistent.
Yeah.
And I don't know. My reaction to it's been pretty consistent. I saw someone earlier say that I was pandering. You know what? You look at these fights and these fighters as cartoon characters, man. When they're on the ground, John Jones is a menace at Albuquerque. He's a dangerous individual. You don't know the next time he's going to go unhinged. We saw it. That was about the third or fourth or fifth incident in his existence when he freaking hit and run a pregnant woman, ran from the scene, evaded the cops for a couple of days. If you're cool having people like that in your community and you're cool sending your family out to potentially get T-boned by John Jones or go to a bar and get punched in the head by Conor McGregor or Mike Perry, then I don't know. I guess you're not dealing with reality. The reality is they have some dangerous individuals. We saw the they're two of the fighters were clashing with one, and a manager's there. You're trying to go to the buffet at the goddamn Palms, and we had who was fighting? Usman and who was it?
Covington, I believe.
All right, and then what's the manager's name? Ali?
Yeah, Ali Abdelaziz.
Yeah, and he's fanning the flames. Like, I got my family there. I'm standing in line, and two lunatics are ready to start fighting. Like, I don't need this.
I miss buffet.
Sorry. UFC has a responsibility at some point to not enable. I understand they're fighters, and some of them are going to be unhinged. And as a person who covered fighting for a long time, I always wanted to defend the guys who were actually good guys, educated, composed, that didn't go out there with a screw loose, potentially weren't going to hit just normal people.
Yeah, and Steve, you mentioned a lot of names there. Ask the people in Hilo, Hawaii about BJ Penn. You talk about menaces to societies and people getting pass after pass after pass after pass. UFC has something to do. Set a precedent here with Mike Perry. Here you go. You have a guy who's clearly crazy, that probably does have some substance abuse issues, and you can do the right thing by him, to Justin's point, by actually giving some teeth to this and actually trying to help the kid rather than as you so put it, Steve. It's concerning, man. Like, Justin, are you a fan of MMA? Like, do you when you watch this, is it just like do you see it? You're like, oh, MMA being MMA. Do you feel protective about it? I mean, again, you're a Las Vegan, so I would imagine on some level MMA is in your blood.
Oh, I mean, that's I grew up wrestling since the time I was 4 and until college, and I wrestled with Gray Maynard. I grew up with Gray. He wrestled here for a long time, and
I didn't know that.
So I'm a big MMA fan, and I co-sign on to everything that Steve said with one legal caveat. I don't think that the UFC has any legal responsibility to do anything about these fighters, any more so than if my employee goes out there, and they're not even employees, by the way, but my employee goes out there acting like a jackass. And how am I supposed to control that when they're not on my time, right? I only have so much time and so much control, and if it's not my event, if it's not my time, then they're going to do what they're going to do. But I do believe that they have a moral responsibility to not bury their head in the sand when they're aware of problems, because the reality is, by keeping them on the promotion and giving them fights and giving them paydays they're enabling the worst parts of this behavior and perpetuating it in the community to make it worse, not better. So they have blood on their hands too in this if they're not actually trying to help these people solve these problems. And like I said, it's not from a legal perspective, but it's certainly from a moral.
Let's move on to this story. This was a story that came out at the beginning of the week where we saw over the 4th of July weekend. I don't know where Diamond Lake is. I'm not really big on geography in southern Michigan, and I know Big Mac's very aware of this area and the Indiana ties, and there's a tie-in, I guess, directly to McKinnell. So what the hell was going on at this Diamond Lake party, and who organized the party? And, Justin can speak to this, that the Attorney General is going to handle prosecutions from the party. But what was with the party?
Okay. Diamond Lake, right there you see it's in Cass County, Michigan. It is on the Michigan-Indiana border. They have a sandbar there. I grew up partying at the sandbar. I grew up going to Diamond Lake. Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day. Great place to be, right? It's a smaller version of Lake Mead. All right, I'm being an asshole. But still, good party, right? And apparently, there was a 4th of July party that happened at the sandbar over 4th of July weekend. Now, I wake up on Saturday. You know how you guys know that guy from high school or college that you know to be one of the biggest idiots in the world, or that person that you tell stories about, or that you constantly, maybe Steve is that guy for a lot of people. I don't know. Steve's a saint for me. But, maybe in a prior time, maybe Steve was a different guy. Either way, we had this guy. He went by the nickname of Toast. His actual name is Keith. And I woke up on Saturday. Rex Chapman, the former NBA baller, he's a great Twitter follower, one of the best Twitter followers in the world. He shared a video from that party in Cass County. Now, I tuned in because I just, that's the sandbar, right? I know that place. I used to party there. Let me see what's going on. So as I'm watching Rex Chapman's video, who shares this video of a COVID-infested Cass County sandbar at Diamond Lake, the video pans, and I see Toast, a.k.a. Keith, the guy that I have made fun of. I mean, listen, I know Keith. Like, I wouldn't say I was friends with him, but we spent a lot of time together. It was, as I was quarantined, as I was inside, Steve, as I rolled over on my pillow and I saw Keith's stupid-ass face in this COVID-infested waters, I call me petty, call me simple, call me whatever you want. It brought great joy to my heart. So, for all those people out there that you want your high school idiot to go viral, you want him to become famous for all the wrong reasons, I got that this weekend. It was a joy, guys. I've had a lot of bad news lately. I just need you guys to know this meant a lot to me. And Justin, I can't wait to ask you, because there's a little bit more to this story, but that's the setup. That's really all I got at this point, Steve. You can roll with it.
So what is the AG doing? What does all this prosecution stuff mean when it comes to one of these mega parties during a pandemic?
Yeah, so I don't know the exact backdrop of the Michigan emergency directive about wearing face masks and social distancing, but apparently it has criminal teeth to it. So it's more than just a ticket. In some states, you're seeing them writing civil tickets, and my guess is because they have constitutional limitations or statutory limitations to what a governor can do in an emergency directive in regards to criminal laws, which would make sense. I think that it's not a popular opinion right now because everybody wants to feel safe, but I do think that most governors are stepping outside of the constitutional limitations right now with some of their directives. And that I want everybody wearing a face mask. I just want to say that right now. And I'm not saying I would do anything different if I was a governor. I would probably fucking do it too and be like, sue me, wear a face mask. I'm going to find your ass. But in Michigan, they have criminal penalties that go with it. And so when they saw these videos popping up on social media, you got the governor and the AG going, I don't know what county that is, but they're like, what the fuck, get out there and get these guys. And the county prosecutor said, well, I can't prosecute these people because we have an ongoing relationship with that area, that event. I don't even know how this is worked out, but that vendor, that event area, we do events there. And so therefore I can't prosecute. I have a conflict of interest, which is fucking dumb. That doesn't make any sense, but okay. Okay,
First of
so
all, there was no planning, Justin. I know this is something that the county is gonna bank on, but Toast Keith, the guy who organized this party, he was the guy in college that got like the broke ass hot tub in a trade, and he didn't have the actual foundation for it. He just made a shell out of it with some plywood, and he always tried to get girls to come back to his tub, right? And I shared this on social media. Like, that's the type of guy we're dealing with. When we were 23, he was partying with 18 or 17-year-olds. Now he's almost 40, and he's throwing creepy-ass COVID parties at the sandbar. But the reason why this is so magical, Justin, is we obviously saw the article, right? Cass County is going after the organizer of this party. Now, the guy is not named as the organizer of the party, but again, I recognized him in the video. I know Keith, right? So I start telling these stories on Twitter. He hits me up on Facebook. We're not Facebook friends, right? But he DMs me on Facebook, and he's like, dude, what the blank are you doing? Why the fuck are you talking shit on Twitter? What's your fucking problem? And I said, dude, I'm not the one that started a pandemic party, on July 4th getting a bunch of teens infected. I said some other shit, and I was like, hey, man, at the end of the day, you do you. Nothing I said was untrue. Take care. Do you. I know you will. But the joy of this, Justin, is his response was, you can say whatever you want, but once you bring my name into it, you might be looking at some lawyers coming after you. Not even 24 hours later, I get that article about the lawyers coming after him for trying to organize a party. And I'm taking my small wins when I can get them, Justin. I wasn't actually in any trouble, though, for outing him. Once that video's released and his face is on social media and the internet, like, that's free game. I can tell all the stories I want, especially if they're true.
yeah, well, make sure that they're true, right? That's the first piece of advice I'm going to give
to you. The hot tub exists, Justin. The hot tub exists.
Not that we have any attorney-client privilege going on right now with a whole bunch of listeners and everybody else in the room, but yes, say true things. That's fine, and it's better than the county prosecutors. Yeah, right.
That sounded like a no.
The AG in Michigan is the one who's going to be conducting the prosecutions. So, and they're going to have a very good reason to want to make an example of these people so that they can set the example for all the counties to do the prosecutions as they should, because it really shouldn't fall on the state AG.
Man. Do you guys have like your village? Do you guys have your village idiot that you would give anything to wake up to and be like, man, I just wish that person would go viral for all the wrong reasons? Like you have that guy, right?
I don't, so maybe that means I'm that guy. if you don't know who the idiot is in the room, then you're the idiot, right?
Okay, hold on. I wasn't actively looking for Keith to go viral or have anyone go after him or anything like that. If you would have made a list of like the top 10 dumbasses that I've known in my life, he's top 5, top 3. So it was more just, again, small wins, excitement, a little bit of justice. And I kind of marked out for the local element. Rex Chapman put the sandbar on the map. I mean, come on.
Hey, Steve, put up Mark and LV's comment about truth is an absolute defense, because I want to hit that real quick on this. I said, say things that are true. That is the saying, that truth is an absolute defense. But when you start dealing in the internet, even if you're saying things are true, you can be bullying somebody, right? So it's a little bit more complicated when we're talking about social media. And you asked the right question first, Ryan, when you said it was already posted and it was already out there, and then I commented on it. So if you were the video taker and you posted it, you're still going to be okay, because it was a public gathering. You had a right to be there, blah, blah, blah. But if it was a private gathering and and you were told that no video should be taken, and then you did, you can actually have liability for what's known as public disclosure of private facts. So they're still true. They're facts. They are, in fact, true, but they were private facts, and you publicly disclosed them, and it hurt me. So yes, they always say truth is an absolute defense, but it's not an absolute defense to everything. It's an absolute defense to defamation or libel.
Let's get to the portion of the program where we deal with anti-maskers and Karens. Their stories every freaking week. let's start off with an anti-masker who apparently is a legal expert. Also wants to extend it to the point of not even allowing her temperature to be taken. By the way, Jay Lawrence saying, I wear a mask 16 hours a day. Just do it for a few hours a day, people. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. Let's bring up this lovely lady. And thankfully, Dennis Miles on TikTok was in this dentist's office and caught this video. This woman doesn't want to wear a mask at the dentist. She has a beef with her temperature being taken, and she's apparently a legal expert. I'll try to turn this up, so if you guys want to quiet down a little bit. Pipe down. Here she is.
I work on my teeth, not my nose. I don't wear a mask getting my teeth cleaned.
But it's about the safety of all of our.
Fine, I'll cover my mouth. Can I go be seated now?
No, because you're not filling out the forms or letting us take your temperature. It's about protecting our.
You can't take my temperature. That's against the law.
All right. Let's just address that. Justin.
Okay, so she's not actually completely stupid. She's just not using this right, okay? So nobody could force you to get your temperature taken without your permission unless there was a warrant, okay? So you walk up to me on the side and say, I'm taking your temperature. Nope, you do not have the right to do that. But she is asking for services that they don't have a legal obligation to have to give her. Mm-hmm. So she could say, you can't take my temperature, and they could say, cool, yeah, you're right, and we don't have to clean your teeth, so get the fuck out of here. That's
All right.
the answer.
She keeps going. I mean, I don't even know how people sit there and not tackle. You know what? Right. Earlier, I said, someone was saying, hey, I'm pandering. I will reverse course. Mike Perry needs to be at this office. Okay? If Mike Perry was there, I'm good with it. John Jones, let's go.
All right. Well, I can't.
You're not an MD.
We're not allowed to. We can't see you.
I have a right to sue you for harassing me, the manager, and this entire company, Smile, whatever you call it, dental. I do have that right, and I talked to my attorney before I came here, too. Okay. So does he want that to happen? I've waited long enough for my teeth to be cleaned, okay? Let's get this done.
At that point, I don't know how anyone stays civil. Let's get this done. You're right. Grab her by the arm and throw her out on her ass. I'm sure you get in trouble for that. Let's finish it up.
Okay.
I can't. They're telling me I can't see you.
Who's there?
The owner of the practice.
I want to hear him. Get him on the phone. He has to send me in written.
I don't know.
You hear? They got to send me in writing.
In the building without a mask either.
I can do what I want.
No,
I'm
you
free.
can't.
It's not a law. It's not a law.
This is a medical law.
No, it's a dental office.
Oh shit!
I don't even know where to go with that. I just say, get the fuck out of here, right? Like,
that's it. I mean, it's insanity.
We knew it was going to be good, Steve. We knew once this stuff started getting passed down.
Big Mac and we break bread like every week, every couple of weeks. Pandemic slowed that down, and we start going down like the, this and they, and it's going to get crazy, and it's Armageddon, and it's chaos. I never imagined like hundreds of these, just morons walking into a dentist's office. These people just want to work. Just get out. Lawsuits, my lawyer, my mask, the temperature. Like, Jesus Christ. I just want to make a buck and go home. Get out.
Adam Hill slogan. We're going to make a buck and get out.
Not even make a buck. I just want everybody out. Just get out.
Just get out. You like saying? Make a penny.
But, I mean, by the way, Steve, this is what I told you about Mexico, right? Like, I never heard one person complain. There's masks required everywhere. Every bar, even at the resorts, had to wear the mask. Didn't hear one person complain. Not one. It's like, you just did it. It's unbelievable. Like, how hard is this?
I know other countries are in, desperate straits like we are for tourism. I don't know. If I saw enough of this from Americans, I'd be like, we just don't even want you here. Like, if that's the average American, it's not. But if that's the average American coming across the border with their stupid leopard pants on and her gunt and all the whole thing, just get out of here. It's just so annoying.
But actually had some conversation.
We're freaking getting outed on social media. I mean, we talked about cancel culture and whether or not how far things need to go on that. But hopefully these people see themselves now and are like, oh, I'm a fucking idiot and I need to change.
They don't.
At least I know I'm a fucking idiot before someone puts a video on me. I think there's some power in that, owning your current situation.
But there's also a group of people that they're heroes to.
Yeah,
like they do see them as heroes.
That's a great point, Adam.
That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
In written, right. I want it in written writing. That's a good pickup.
I want it in spoken word. Okay, that doesn't.
No,
she's not the most intelligent.
Yeah, Justin.
Standard Karen uniform leggings. That's so good. That's so good.
We did ask you this already, I think, Justin, but there's no repercussions for us for putting people on social media, right?
No. Well, okay. There could be. It depends on the context. I mean, if you're the originator of what you put on social media and you take it, say, in somebody's private home, that could be a problem, right? You don't have a right to, get onto somebody's property and start taking videos of them, right? You can't do that. But in a public place or in a place in which the public gathers, right? So any business that's open to the public.
Okay, because I was going to say this, it's not public. Like theoretically, right? It's private, and then you could film this lady, and then the dentist could be like, "I never told you could put this lady out on social media."
No. So the dentist's office is open to the public, right?
Okay.
They have opened their doors, and anybody's allowed to walk in and request something. Like, what would be different is like my office, right? During the pandemic, you couldn't. There's no door. You can't come in. You have to call and set an appointment. So we were not open to the public. We were open to our clients, and we could have them in, and we would come open the door. So we were not a place in which public gathers. So I know it sounds like the same thing, but the wording matters. That's why you'll see all the emergency directives that apply to like restaurants, bars, casinos, all those. They say, and they'll say all public areas. So that what they mean by that is everything owned by the government, public lands, public buildings. That's all cool. That all applies by the rules. They have the right to do that. Or, and this is where emergency directives get important, places in which the public can gather. And so a private business still can be held to these orders because they are open to the public.
So I want to examine, for those of us who will follow rules, where's our rights? Like, what can we do? So there was a story that was making the rounds today on social media, and I'll show you the picture here in a second. Someone says, as a Southwest Airlines A-list member, I don't know why that matters, but I'm upset that they are not enforcing their mask policy on board. My mother's on a flight to Denver this morning. She alerted flight attendants, passengers, and there's 3 women sitting in a row without mask on. The passengers said we can't wear masks because of medical reasons, and Southwest let it go. Really disappointed in what was my favorite airline. We're going to see people try to do this more and more on airlines where they're like, sorry, medical issue, and they're not allowed to ask. You don't have to verify this. We've been through this. Like, how does Southwest confirm that these people, like, the whole plane could do it then? Yeah, I'm fat and I've got asthma. No mask. Like, I'm fat, but I don't have asthma. But how, like, why can't I just do this?
And not to be overly generalistic about this, but why are all the people who have the health issues that can't get behind masks white women? Why is it always the demographic that can't breathe through a mask?
It's genetic, Justin.
Yeah,
true.
So no, they can ask. Remember, they can be required to adhere to a sincerely held, honestly held disability if reasonable accommodations can be met. Oh, you can't wear a mask? This is Adam's Hill to die on. Face shield, boom,
Face shield.
put it on, or you're out, right? That's it. That's the answer. And man, I'm super disappointed in Southwest too. It's my favorite airline too. They better get their shit together.
Okay, now
I can tell you, I was on a Southwest flight coming home the other day, and they were pretty vigilant about it and making sure people did it. And there was one guy that was trying to pull he just had a huge bottle of water, and he just held it in his hand the whole flight like, I'm drinking. And they're like, at some point, they're like, no, put the mask on. Like, when you take a sip, you can take it off. But like,
damn it,
they were very stringent about it.
You know
Why
what?
does it gotta be that way? Why do assholes gotta do that shit? What's the problem with the mask?
It's just a piece of cloth. And you guys, you know what this reminds me of in terms of like, you can't ask me about my condition and I'm going to do what the fuck I want? Service animals. I bring in fucking peacocks on airlines and be like, you can't ask me about it. This is my mini elephant. It's my service animal. You can't ask me about it. Also, hereditary genetic to white women. True. Fact.
Dude, don't get me fucking started about animals on fucking planes. That shit drives me crazy. But the surface...
Is that the same thing?
I know, it is. But the service animal is different in that you actually cannot ask for papers of proof of service animal.
Right.
Okay?
Yes, you
but
can.
You can absolutely ask somebody who claims a disability, what's the nature of your disability and what accommodations can be made? And when they say, I don't have to tell you that, and say, I don't have to fucking let you on here. You know, like you got to tell me what the problem is, and then we can determine whether or not I can make a reasonable accommodation. And if they say, I've got a disability that prevents anything being in front of my face of any kind, face shield or cloth or otherwise, and you say, well, I'm sorry, we can't make an accommodation that makes this space safe for everybody, so we can't service you. Which is actually, I wish I could find it because that's MGM's standard. They put it out there to their employees. It says, you ask them to do this, you tell them they can have a face shield. They say no, they're fucking not coming in.
Because I wonder what my rights are. Because this would be one where I would get really annoyed. Because I'm gonna play the good soldier. I'm gonna wear the mask, right? Where's my right if I get up and go, I don't feel safe, so I'm gonna get off this plane. I'm getting on the next flight. I'm going to get, by the way, in a fucking A seat because I always check in on time and I'm a lunatic about it. And there's no change flight fee. Or you can kick them off the plane. Like, where's my purchase protection?
Yeah, no, I think you absolutely have a great claim to that, to say that, hey, you're responsible for any charges that I incur and my lost time for having to go on a different flight because you wouldn't enforce the fucking federal guidelines for airlines and provide a safe environment for me to travel.
What was the comment I just saw though? Like, what are the odds 3 ladies traveling together all have the same condition? But they can't wear the mask? What are we doing? Stop it. There you go. Yeah.
Right. And then I'm sure if you followed them on like Facebook or their social media, the next weekend they're out on their, ATVs with like a dust guard right across their face.
Those ladies aren't riding ATVs.
Yeah. Rick, this was never.
Yeah. I bet you they are, dude. Bro, those are ATV riders, man.
Yeah. Actually, would I get arrested for being that belligerent? Robert's real belligerent.
Saying the things that you said? No.
Yeah.
Now, if you were like, pointing a finger in somebody's chest and slapping people around, yeah, you're getting arrested.
If you went full Mike Perry,
I'd put an apostrophe RE on that year.
Drop a few N-bombs.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on and make the transition. Oh no. You know what? I'm going to jump ahead. I think this one's really fascinating. We've got a story with an off-duty college police officer outside of Walmart in Oklahoma City. You read the story, Justin? Did you see this one?
Mm-mm. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'll take you through it. Someone bought a barbecue at a Walmart. They had the receipt for the barbecue, but apparently they either mistakenly didn't pay for all the other items or they stole the other items, which doesn't make sense if the most expensive item was the barbecue. They're confronted in a parking lot by an off-duty officer from Langford College in town. He's trying to drag them out of the car, and they're like, no, we're leaving. And they start driving away, and he's just like, here comes the service revolver, and he starts pumping shots into the car. I'll punch up the video. This is like, what is going on? Over even if they did commit some shoplifting and it's like a petty theft, come on.
Yeah, but that's just an everyday at Walmart in Oklahoma. That just happens every day.
So my initial thought is it's going to depend upon the state laws and restrictions on use of force in that state. Here, you can't use deadly force for the protection of certain types of crimes if there's no threat of serious bodily harm or death to others. So what I'm envisioning is, they bought the barbecue, but then they stuffed a bunch of shit inside, and the other person, the checker, didn't look in the barbecue. So no, if he's even in his jurisdiction, first off, maybe he's not. The fact that if he's in his jurisdiction, doesn't matter if he's off duty or not. If he's identified himself as a police officer, it looks like he does, he's got the jacket on or whatever, then I think you're in trouble for using deadly force. But it's Oklahoma, so maybe you're not.
All right, ready?
How did he find out that how did he find out they stole something? Just in the parking lot.
Yeah.
That's a university cop?
All right, we'll start it. Let's all stay quiet.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's Langford University. Langston. Ready? $11 shots.
Shit.
Okay. Reaction? He did hit the driver. The driver is hospitalized. I'll try to get another video up to give you details. They're not. I think they're stable. Nothing, in terms of close to death. But yeah, he got off 11 shots. I think he hit him with 3 or 4. I'll show you one more time. I mean, is that police officer, is he within his rights at that point? Because he could claim what? They're trying to run me over?
We've seen it, right? That's exactly what happened in the, gosh, now I can't even get these cases straightened away. But the cop that they paid to retire, who they didn't press charges against, who said he feared for his life when the kid was backing out of the driveway at a speed of like 3 miles per hour, and he was stepped off to the side and said he thought he was going to get run over. So we've seen that argument before, and certainly, I mean, he is in risk of being run over. He is in risk of, I think, bodily harm. How serious? I don't know. I don't think he's in risk of losing his life. I don't know what's going to happen here.
But how long does that apply? Like, he doesn't start shooting until they start driving away.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm going by that case. Steve, you jogged my memory where they paid the cop to quit. He resigned. They gave him a pay package, and everybody was in an uproar. And he shot and killed a kid that was backing out of his own driveway.
It was Overland Park in Kansas.
That was Kansas. There you go. And they didn't press any charges. Their own internal investigation said he was within his rights. And when you just watch the video, I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about right now? He was in no danger whatsoever, and he had the gun pulled before the car even came back. At least this dude pulled the gun after they're trying to run him. I don't know if they're trying to run him over or just trying to get out, but he almost gets run over. His foot almost gets run over. I just wonder if he was within his duties to even try to perform the arrest in the first place. That's the big question.
Well, that's the key. And Justin, I've always heard, it's my understanding with stores like Walmart and Target, they have really large losses already built into their bottom line for the year. So they're already accounting for $20 million in theft per store, whatever the number is. And that's why when Target and Walmart do catch a shoplifter, they prosecute so hard. Like, you've probably heard the stories. Like, I mean, they go hard at shoplifters. This, though, is absurd. It's why is the guy even there? For petty larceny, for petty theft, it should have never escalated. If you have him on video, okay, you have the car, right? You have the license plate. But to send an armed man over there where you don't know what type of training he has, he's a university cop, as Steve said, but it looked like he had some pretty decent, in terms, equipment. And it makes me uncomfortable. Armed, how much training did he have? Again, people could have been dead for stealing stuff.
Right, and if is or is not within the university cop jurisdiction, whether or not the different police forces share authority. Like in Nevada, we do, right? NHP and Metro, they share authority. They can both work within each other's jurisdictions, and that's statutory. It's in there, so it's allowed to do it. Yeah, I think it's important what Ari says. Like, did he identify himself as police? I'm sure he did. He was wearing all the shit. I think that jacket even said police or something. That's what it looked like to me. So I think he's identified, but I just don't know that he actually had the authority to start the arrest.
He was off duty and he just saw the person take the barbecue out. Apparently, I'm reading the story right now. Like he literally just saw the guy take it.
Here's a news report update from 2 days ago. The original story with the shooting was 5 days ago. Let's turn on the
accounts here. One witness capturing cell phone video of the incident on Saturday. According to the police report, she told officers that she saw the off-duty Langston University officer open fire, firing about 11 shots, and you could see it and hear it on the video that went viral online. Another witness saying that he saw that police officer fire 4 to 5 rounds, quote, point blank, and then firing more as the car drove away. Now, that suspect was treated for gunshot wounds and then released. He is behind bars tonight facing charges. That is the shoplifting suspect behind bars. His family telling us that he had a receipt and did not leave the store with more than what he paid for. Del City Police, by the way, investigating this right now. They say that they will submit evidence to the district attorney to determine if that police officer will be charged for shooting the suspect.
Let's just start something, man. I mean, it can't just be that he had the receipt for exactly what he had in the car. I mean, he wouldn't be behind bars if that's the case. So
it's our vacation at home fair. Family leisure, spas, patio furniture, swing sets, and more. All priced to move. Shop online. Call us or set up a
break it. Anarchy, chaos. Okay, damn it. I was hoping for it to go a little longer. Really get you pissed off.
I don't know. If I had to guess, because it's Oklahoma, I'm gonna say nothing's gonna happen to him.
How about the fact that it's off duty? That's another caveat to this story. I mean, the fact that this. I mean, does that play into account? He saw. It's almost like, what were you looking for?
Yeah, but I mean, I know in Nevada there are statutes that if off-duty officers witness a crime, they are permitted to engage. So, okay. I mean, if he's saying he saw it go down and then he's trying to make an arrest and they try to run me over,
yeah, I
use my weapon, I identified myself. I told them, what I saw and told them to get out. I was making an arrest and they, used their car as a lethal weapon against me. And so I was justified using lethal force. That's going to be the story.
So if you're yeah, that's true. Why does he have his uniform on? So if you're a CCSD cop and you see somebody jaywalk, just light them up.
What? No. Well, that's why I say Oklahoma is the big deal here, right? In Nevada, the key is going to be that he says that the car was coming after him and that he was in danger of being run over and making a lawful arrest. And so, under those circumstances, that's a plausible case for using deadly force, right? If somebody's driving a car right at you and you're a police officer, you would expect that they're going to fire a weapon to try to save themselves and save their lives. Is this the same thing? No. Is it as bad as the one we saw in Kansas? Not even close. The one in Kansas is a fucking joke.
Yeah.
That one, like, the person doesn't even know there's a cop there. He's backing out of the driveway at normal speed.
This could be very complex, Justin, but we always talk about identifying yourself as an officer and how that changes the scenario. Like, this is a dude wearing a police shirt in a Walmart parking lot. Like, if he tells me he's a cop, there's no fucking way I believe him. So, like, I mean, on a serious level, like, do you just have to respect anybody that says I'm a cop?
Mistake number one: don't ever find yourself in a Walmart fucking parking lot, bro. In Oklahoma, like, just don't do it.
Fair.
Get your grill somewhere else.
Yeah.
But if somebody just yells, "I'm a cop," like, I'm not believing him,
right? Well, when he pulls out that sidearm, and starts shooting into your car, you might believe you.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, police really hate to be asked for identification. I speak from experience. You know, you're not wrong, Adam. You're not wrong.
Next story up. This one's incredible. That canceling stuff that was going on where a couple of the country acts were trying to get ahead of the curve, like Dixie Chicks. Now they're the Chicks. That's stupid. Lady Antebellum was like, Antebellum period in the South was pretty goddamn horrific, built on the back of slaves. So we're going to change our name to Lady A. And then someone immediately pointed out, like, that's actually an African-American singer who's had like a 20-year career. You may not want to go with Lady A. Apparently, they negotiated with her to try to get the name. The talks broke down. Now they're suing her. Now Lady Antebellum is suing the original Lady A. Like, what? What do you think of this? What's going on here, Justin?
I don't know, other than when people hear about, one person suing another, not all lawsuits are created equal, right? They may say that their lawsuit may simply be what's called a declaratory action, which says, us and this other person have a disagreement as to who has the rights to use the term Lady A. We can't figure it out ourselves, so we need a judge to tell us who's right. And so it's not about like getting monetary damages. It's not about putting anybody in jail. It's not even about like trying to ruin somebody. It literally is, right. We can't figure this out and we need a judge to weigh in.
There's more details here. It says,
yeah, they say that they trademarked the name a long time ago because it was so close to their name, and that they just kind of allowed her to use it without making any claims or anything.
Oh,
but now
so go down 4 graphs there, you can see it.
Yep.
Keep going, Adam.
Yeah, so they're saying now that they want to use it, they wanted to work out something amicably. She asked for $10 million. They said this is ridiculous. So now they're trying to, enforce their trademark that they say they have had since long before they tried to claim it.
Okay, so super, super good trademark discussion here. Just because you trademark something doesn't mean you have the rights. It's simply registering it, right? When you register a trademark, it's just setting a definite date that the world knows you were using this. Now, it requires two things for you to maintain actual trademark rights that are enforceable. One, that you actually fucking use it. And two, that you don't let other people use it without telling them that they can't. If you just sit on your rights and you let other people use the same name with impunity, you don't tell them anything, you don't do this is why cease and desist letters go out. This is it. Because if you rest on your rights, you lose your rights. And so if their story is true, they have a really weak ass argument for a trademark because they say we trademarked it. That's just paperwork, bro. You can trademark anything. But in order to actually have rights to enforce, you have to use it, which they said they didn't. And two, you have to prevent others from trying to use it, which they said they didn't.
Sorry to come over the top on this, Justin. They are claiming the other way. So what they're saying is that they trademarked it and they have used like in their shows like a big Lady A sign, things like that, and that this lady has been using it and she never came after them for using their Lady A, so that now she has not claimed it because she never came at them for using it.
Yeah, okay. So we still have the same two arguments, right? Which is that in order to enforce your trademark rights, it has to be something that you use. And number two, that you have to prevent other people from trying to use it or infringe upon your rights. That's why you'll see, if they don't mind that somebody uses it, you'll see licensing deals for $1, right? You still recognize I have the superior right, but I'm allowing you to use it. I'm going to give you permission. But I would say having a sign in the back of a concert is not necessarily the same thing as a trademark of a name, right? They may have trademark rights as to the sign itself because the Lady A is in a certain font and it's used in a certain way, but as to a label, as to a name, that's a different usage.
Isn't this kind of like poetic though? In like, for progressive individuals, like Dixie Chicks, right? Dixie Chicks want to, or the Lady Antebellum. They don't want to acknowledge the Confederate leanings of their name in the past. So what do? Maybe go after a black jazz singer named Lady A and try to, you know what, guys? Just give her the name, and then a listener put up, be more creative than Lady A. I agree. I found a solution. Lady Antifa. Join the fight. Give Lady A to the black jazz singer. Everyone comes out roses, and we can all move on. Because this is very stupid. And honestly, it's a ridiculously stupid look for Lady Antebellum. Like, just, there's an easier way to get on the other side of this, other than litigation. I know you might not agree with that.
No, I agree with that 100%. I agree with that 100%. Like, oftentimes, the best advice lawyers give to clients is you tell them the legalities of things, and then you tell them about what practically will happen in life, right? And they're two very different things. And it's like, yeah, could we win this legal argument in court at some point? We might win that legal argument, but let me lay out what life looks like on that process, right? And you look like an idiot. Like, somebody needs to tell them they look stupid in this, and the fact that some people don't see it as a lawyer's job. I do, right? Like, I often talk to my clients about, in their case, like, okay, can we win this? We can win this, but at what expense in the rest of your life, right? At what expense, what's going to happen over the course of the next 2 years as we fight this out? Like, what things are you not going to be able to do that you want to do? What things are you going to have to do that you don't want to do? And that's all part of being a good counselor of law, not just a lawyer.
Final topic coming up, but I want to go back to a question that we didn't get in on the Oklahoma shootout. It wasn't a shootout. The cop shooting into the car in that Walmart parking lot. But Gilberto says, I know you guys are past this topic, but when or how do you get okay to believe a cop is not a cop? Sort of what Adam was talking about earlier.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I don't have an answer for that, right? If you legitimately believe that somebody's asserting themselves to be a cop that's not a cop, call the cop, right? But don't act on it and go, you know what? I'm pretty good at identifying cops, and I think you're full of shit, and so I'm out.
That's not a bluff.
I want it in writing, and this is against the law.
Written writing. You want it in written writing.
That's not a bluff you want to call, is what you're saying.
Right.
But I think, is it your responsibility different in interactions with police and non-police, right? I mean, like, in the eyes of the law, you have to act differently. So there is a point in a confrontation or in any kind of incident where, like, you do have to understand if you are dealing with a cop or a fake cop. Like, that is an important part of the scenario.
100%. Yeah. Or even the different, I'll say, classifications of peace officers, right? If you've got some security personnel somewhere, and Vegas is a great example. The security in the hotels and casinos here actually have more statutory rights than I would guess any other security in any other state in the United States. And so they actually have rights to detain. They actually have little detention centers, right? They built that in. They've done an excellent job of lobbying the legislature over the course of the last, forever, 90 years to ensure that they got exactly what they wanted, and that they have that. Mall cop, right? Different, right? Not a real cop, but they do have some rights under statute, under citizen's arrest, so long as, depending on the state, depending on what's going on, but they are obviously told don't arrest, right? Observe and report.
Meter maids?
Meter maids?
I mean, I think aren't they indoctrinated by the actual police department?
Probably. I don't know the answer to that. but yeah, I mean, they might be, I don't know. I mean, they're certainly government employees, but whether or not they're designated as peace officers, probably not. Probably because just from a fiscal standpoint, all the training they'd have to go through and how much they'd have to pay, they probably don't.
Good comment here from Martin. And
I agree, Martin.
100%, Martin.
Let me read it for the audience that may listen to this on the podcast. This is why the country is so screwed up. Rational and reasonable people like Justin, who are intelligent enough to run this country properly, are also smart enough to know it's not worth the headache. So he served his 2 years, and he's like, I am out of here. I can't be around people like Michelle Fiore. He didn't actually mention Fiore.
Don't put that on me. I didn't say that.
Wild card to close things. We had breaking news tonight. How does everyone feel about going back to phase one when it comes to bars? Do we all understand what they're doing? Why is Sisolak doing this? Who do you blame? What do you think? Go ahead, Justin.
Oh man, this one's tough for me. I mean, I think the bars is easy, low hanging fruit. Yeah, let's not have fucking people in bars. Okay, cool, right? Let's start to see the statistics go on a downward trend. From because 4th of July, there are a lot of people here. I'm expecting to see some things go up, and they have a little bit. But at the same time, I am sympathetic to some of the arguments of the people that ideologically are not on the same side of the aisle as me when they say the whole point of the initial lockdown was to flatten the curve and to prepare ourselves for this. It wasn't to shut down everything to protect every single human life to the end of this whole pandemic. I'm sympathetic to that argument. I think it has some merit because it certainly was the narrative at the beginning of this pandemic. We just need to flatten the curve. It wasn't take away the curve. And I am, from a practical standpoint, super concerned about where the state of Nevada is going to be in 2021 if we shut down again. Right. And I'm just not in favor of it based on what we've been seeing lately. And I'll just cite to Washoe County did an antibody test on general population. Very simple. They did a statistical analysis, very similar to like polling. And what they came up with is they believe that 3% of the people in Washoe County, in Reno area, Reno Sparks, contracted COVID, which is about 5 to 6 times higher than the actual numbers of reporting. And so if you assume that to be true, then the actual fatality rate on this thing is somewhere around like 0.2%. And that fatality rate is sort of equal to the general fatality rate when you wake up in the morning, right? There's a 0.2% chance you might die today. From car accident or anything else. And so based on those numbers, I think that we need to mask up. We got to do the easy fucking things. We need to not go to sports, right? We need to not go to concerts. We need to not go to bars, but we gotta open up the rest of the stuff, man. We gotta move on and continue on and hopefully get a vaccine by the end of the year, and we got to go, because if we shut down again, this state is going to crumble.
I'm with you. The only reason I can't be sympathetic, Justin, because I'm with you on all of those arguments. And I actually, from the beginning, for those that listen to the show, was one of these people like, we don't have to shut down. We just have to do the right things, but we won't. And so when you say like you're sympathetic to the argument, I am, but it's the same fucking people. Like the same people that are like, open. Yeah, but I don't want to socially distance and I don't want to wear a mask. Well, then fuck you. We have to like that. That's why I'm not sympathetic to that argument. Like I am with you 100%. I'm actually with that side of the argument in a lot of ways. Like, hey, listen, we can't sacrifice everything for this, and we got to figure out how to move forward with our life and still balance all these things out. Like I'm with all those. But that requires doing the little things, as you said. And the same people that won't do them are the same people that are out there screaming about not being open. Like, you can't have it both ways.
Well,
why are we? Oh, sorry, Justin, go ahead.
I was just going to say, no one side of the argument wants to be characterized by the extreme parts of that group, right? So, I mean, I don't think it's fair to say it's the same people who are the stupid asses who fight all this stuff are the ones who are saying, hey, the whole point was to flatten the curve. We flattened the curve, time to go. But they certainly use that argument to further their whatever their fucking no mask agenda is. I don't even know why that's an agenda, but whatever. They have co-opted that argument, which I think is a reasonable argument and discussion to have as part of their reason for not doing this. So I just say I think there's a whole big bunch of people who are doing the right thing, who are wearing the mask, who do think we should open up.
But I want to point out I'm saying specifically the same people that I know that I see on Twitter that will not wear a mask and complain about social distancing are the same ones that are trying to put this argument out there. It's people locally that I know that I've seen do it. It's so ridiculous. Like you can't do both. Sorry, Ryan. Go ahead.
No. I just the thing that and it kind of goes tied into everything that we're talking about. I don't know why we're punishing small businesses here in the Valley. Because by and large, I know there's people who've had different experiences, right? By and large, the small businesses that I frequented have been doing a good job. I don't know if they're a hot spot for COVID or not, but I do know some hot spots that are on the boulevard that are essentially getting off from this scot-free. We're talking about billion-dollar corporations. They can survive. They were the ones that were allowed to open and brought in all these tourists on Memorial Day, all these tourists from Arizona and California. Over the July 4th weekend. They're the reasons I would say more that we're shutting down than the locals and the small businesses that keep the Valley afloat. It feels like and I get why it's hard to plan if you're Sisolak. This is not, you are having to answer, right, to the corporations, to the casinos, to the powers that be. So I get that it's a fluid situation. But again, I'm going back to, it feels like we don't have a firm plan. And it's back to what you said, Adam. If we didn't have to shut down the first time, I completely agree with you. If we would have put things in place, mandatory masks, really been more authoritative with that, not open the casinos back up fully like we did, or as full as we did. You know what I mean? My first initial knee-jerk reaction upon seeing the news was, why does it feel like small businesses are getting hurt when I don't feel like they've contributed to the problem in the ways that maybe other people have?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think that I'm sympathetic to the situation Sisolak's that he's been put in.
Sure.
And I generally give him passing marks on what we've done. I think that we got to remember when this shit all went down, nobody knew what the fuck was going on. Like I remember when they pulled the players off the court in Vegas, and I was like, whoa, this must be like serious. If the NCAA is willing to give away like millions of dollars, turns into billions of dollars by shutting down. And so I have to imagine, having had a little bit of insight into what our Nevada government is, that if you've got people in Texas and Florida and New York and California whose economies are so freaking large that they are probably some of the first people that are aware of the information that was relevant to this discussion, that Nevada is pretty low on that list. That Sisolak acted as one of the first states to act and probably had some of the least amount of information. So like the criticism of, hey, should have had masks up right away. Fucking nobody even knew if masks helped. Nobody knew anything. And so I give him pretty good remarks, or pretty good marks on what he's done. And I will say that James is right.
I agree.
I met Sisolak a little bit. I know him a little bit. He does care about people. I firmly believe that.
How about this one from Penny Packer? Just your opinion. Do you think we're far away from closing the casinos again?
I do not think there's any possibility we're closing these casinos again.
Not happening.
We can't.
No.
We just
not happening.
Fiscally cannot do it.
Okay. If you want to feel for the small business, I saw this from our buddy Naked City Chris about 3 hours ago. He says, so let me get this straight. We flattened the curve because you closed everything for 2.5 months. Tourists flood into the city, to the Strip, and especially for the 4th because Arizona and California were closed. We have a spike, and you decide to allow tourists to still keep coming into the city. But let's close tomorrow night the locally owned bars, many of which are barely surviving. Please, someone explain this to me as I jumble up the words. But Chris says I'm at a bleeping loss. And those are the guys I feel for.
Yep, I'm super sympathetic to exactly everything that Chris just said. And I wish that we had spent these last 4.5 months of using our government resources to come up with plans for how each different type of business and industry can work in a safe manner, right? Like, I wish that each industry came together with one elected official and said, okay, here's, we got to keep people away from each other. We got to wear masks. Come up with a plan that we can take and adopt and make the standard by which your business and not even your business, your industry can use as guidelines. And then we're going to enforce the shit out of it. We're going to force it so the bad actors get out of here. And so the good people like Chris, who freaking awesome and can operate his business and do it, because the low-hanging fruit is bars, concert venues, and sporting events, right? It's the low-hanging fruit. But of those three that I just talked about, bars are the ones where I think I could say, if I owned a bar, I can come up with a plan that I can keep everybody away from each other. I can serve them drinks. I can have them wear masks. Give me that chance. I'm going to have a fucking mask with a straw through it that's fucking got a rubber gasket and nothing can come out. And I'm going to come up with some shit, but give me the chance. And that's what if we could do this all over again, I wish that there was a task force of the elected leaders that met with separate business and industries to come up with that. And we had that opportunity and we missed it, right? For 4.5 months, our elected leaders in the Assembly and the State Senate were not a part of this solution. They are now in special session to fucking solve the budget issues. This isn't their fault. They can't call themselves in special session. The governor, well, they can with 2/3, but there's not a super majority of one party, okay? So the governor has to call them in special session. But I think there was an opportunity with all those elected leaders who wanted to help to come up and join forces in task force to solve these freaking problems. And then then maybe we're like, how Adam felt in Mexico, that there was no safer place than Vegas. And I don't think people feel that. And we need to do better. We need to be the safest place in the country.
Is it too late? Because you said if you could go back in time, my mind immediately jumps to 2021, 2022, and I think back to this conversation, it was like, shit, we could have started then, but we didn't. Like this, what if this goes on a year or two, this prolongs? Like, I mean, it's better to start now and get on the horse than to say we're past the point of no return, right?
Well, they have started. I mean, and it's not like they're listening to my fucking ideas. No, nobody's asked me, but there is something that is along those lines. So they created a rural and an urban committee to discuss about reopening. So Clark County Commissioner Marilyn Kirkpatrick is the chair of the urban committee, and the urban committee speaks for Reno and Vegas on how businesses can reopen. They make recommendations to the governor, and then the governor adopts them or not in the emergency declaration. Do I think that that's the best process? I don't, but there is a process going in. And then rurals have a separate, as they should, frankly, as they freaking should, man. If you live in Eureka County, Nevada, you should be able to have open whatever you want, man. You and the 300 people that live there, you guys knock yourselves out, right? Like, do your thing. So there is some of that happening now, but I think that there should be more troops on the ground and more interaction with the different business industry leaders, and to have that adopted and co-signed by the legislature.
Is one last thing, is Koken being too harsh here? He says, can't blame it all on the tourist. Local bar owners let customers get away with throwing caution out. He says, went to one bar right after restrictions eased. Fucking joke. Haven't gone to any since. What's everyone seeing out there?
Half and half for me.
Right? You and I, Ryan, where have you and I gone? We went to Casino Valley Verde. We hit Barley's.
Village Pub.
Very late. Village Pub. Very late, though.
Yeah. And I've been to some other places. Carson Kitchen downtown has operated at 40% capacity and done an outstanding job of social distancing the entire time. I was at a bar over 4th of July weekend. I'm not going to name it, but to Koken's point, yeah, there were no fucks given. That was shots for everybody, people smoking, doing their thing. Yeah, they had great hand sanitizer with ultraviolet light, and that's all great, but in terms of concern, there was none.
Adam, Adam hangs around more anti-maskers than anyone I know.
I don't hang around them,
especially since he's an eternal lockdowner. Have you been to bars or restaurants with him?
With one group I did one night and sat very far away, and they were making fun of me. Another night I went in with a mask. I was the only one. They all made fun of me. I will say I got a text tonight from a bunch of people that want to go out for the last night before lockdown, and I was like, nah, bro, not happening. It's not gonna happen. It just doesn't make any sense. And I know
tough, right?
Yeah, I know the comeback will be, you just went to Mexico. Yeah, real effing safe there. Not here. It's not.
And we're all taking
right.
risks. Yeah,
frustrating.
That's that. Cofield, we take risks when we go out, but it's to what we all said. It's mitigated risk, right? You do the things that are responsible to enjoy the freedoms of things being open. If we have 140,000 dead Americans and the cases and numbers are rising, well, shit, consequences.
And I agree with David. I went to Palace the night it opened again, and Red Rock, and they're trying, and they got the sanitizer everywhere. They're making people wear the masks, so it can be done.
They've got reason to.
You got to get cooperation. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, they've got reason to. I mean, they don't want to get shut down.
Yep.
Like the casinos are going to be very vigilant about it. Casinos to me are going to be safer than other places right now.
I agree.
Wow.
I agree.
All right, Justin, great job.
Thanks, guys. I ain't going to any bars or casinos. I'm staying the fuck out of all that shit.
And everyone's got a different situation. Martin, what bar are you at, buddy? DM me. I mean, seriously, I'll go to a bar and I want to see I want to see them stay open. I love bars. I want to see people make money. I'm not mad at bars. I understand what's going on. It's hard to deal with customers who want to let loose. Everyone's been trapped. It's tough, man. It's uncomfortable to tell people, hey, put a mask on. Frankly, if they told me at bars that I had to have the mask on between swigs, I would do it. If those are the rules, I haven't done that, but I would do it.
Steve, that happened to me at the D. I was down at the D this weekend, and in between sips, like if I went longer than a minute and a half without putting my mask up, the bartender came over to me and was like, hey, man, and I even had to tell the bartender, I am not an anti-masker. I'm sorry. It's just habit. You kind of forget, you're drinking and you're talking, and you're also wanting to be responsible. You're distancing and everything. But I put the bartender at ease. I was like, man, remind me. Hopefully this will be the only time you need to remind me because I already feel like an asshole that you came over here. But to your point about casinos being extra vigilant, I think most people have experienced that. If they went out, I know, Justin, you haven't, but you can rely on our firsthand experiences.
They have a lot to lose.
I was going to say real quick, too, like Doug saying I follow the rules. I don't always follow the rules, but I try to most of the time. Most people don't want to be told what to do. There's also part of me that if I go somewhere, I feel like I got to respect the employees inside, find out how stringent they are. But I've had one time where I forgot a mask and I felt so embarrassed, like so ashamed. And it's a silly example, but it was actually, I've talked many times on this show and Cofield and Company, we're fostering kittens. And I had to pick up the last batch of kittens after they had been fixed, and I forgot a freaking mask. And I go in, and I was like, "I'm so sorry." And they're just like, "You got to go outside. Just wait outside." And I sat in the car, and I'm like, "What an asshole I am." And I guess everyone doesn't feel that way, I made a simple mistake, but I was like, "Hey, those are the rules." Yep.
The only activity I've really done is I've been golfing, and on the golf, in and around the clubhouse and the golf store, the employees are pretty good about it, but the golfers don't, man. I wear a fucking mask everywhere, right? If I'm leaving my car or I'm leaving my house or I'm leaving my office, the mask. And sometimes they're just kind of looking at me like, look at the dumbass wearing the fucking mask, but I don't care, whatever.
Yeah.
But they're not.
Right,
the golf courses haven't been super stringent.
Okay. Thanks for chiming in. Another long legal podcast. We're back next Thursday with the legal, but back tomorrow with Cofield and Company. Late night happy hour. Got some good guests lined up as we close out the week. McKinnell, good job. Adam, thanks for jumping in at the end. We'll see you guys and spread the word. We're on Facebook and Twitter and now Twitch. I send out the Twitch link all the time. At a minimum, go and get us from like 8 subscriptions on Twitch to like maybe 12. If you can go and just whatever you have to do, subscribe on Twitch, subscribe on YouTube. It helps grow the whole thing. So thank you.